Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. With host and founder Richard Case and co-host and retreat leader Kathy Ricconi. Join us every weekday at this time to discuss news, spend time in the Word, and receive answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, good morning, Kathy. Here we are.
Good morning.
Wednesday, getting toward the end of January in our sequence here. So amazing, isn't it? How time goes.
It is. Yeah, and we've been moving through some beautiful things. If anybody is just now joining us, there's a lot of good material that Rich has been teaching us on overcoming fear, worry, and anxiety. And I've loved the last few days in particular, just talking about possessing the promises and really stepping into his restoration and resolution.
Yeah, amen to that. So we're keep talking about this process of possession, possessing the promised land, and that is that the way that God resolves things is, remember, it's always by faith. Without faith, it's impossible to please Him. It's stepping into that spiritual place where He has to speak things to fulfill them. So it's not a natural way that we live in terms of, well, let me figure this out.
Right.
And I can see cause and effect, and if I could just address the cause or come up with a good solution, isn't this a good idea? Then it could be resolved. And most believers have lived their life really with the burden on them. I'm trying to be a good Christian. I'm trying to operate well. I pray. I even go to Bible study. Hey, God, would you? But our prayer list tends to be a wish list, what I call a wish list.
Right.
God, would you take care of this, take care of this, take care of this? And by the way, here's how I'd like you to do that.
Right. And the tendency is to live by that little phrase that you hear people say, do everything you can and let God do the rest.
Right.
Or do your best and then let God do the rest.
Right.
And
right.
False theology.
That's it. Yeah. And if you can figure it out, then go ahead and good luck. And maybe God will take care of it later. But it's by faith, which means that it's always about, I got an issue, I have a decision to make, I have something that isn't working, something is broken, my relationships are having trouble, or my business is having a problem, or my ministry has a problem, or financially I got whacked with something. And he says, by faith, you're going to have to come and ask me. So that as we're talking about possession of the promised land, the Israelites, their problem was, remember, they were in slavery to Egypt. And he had said to Moses, I'm going to fulfill releasing you from slavery, and you're going to be my spokesman, you and Aaron, and I want you to believe it. And so he said, well, how's that going to work? He said, well, I'm going to give you supernatural power that is going to bring plagues against Egypt. By the way, Pharaoh's heart's going to get harder and harder, so he's not going to tend to say yes, but there'll be a moment where he'll say yes, and then I'll do things supernaturally. So he does, and they brings the plagues against them. And finally, I'm going to kill the firstborn son, which God does. And he says, now you Israelites can be protected by what's called Passover. You put blood on the doorstops, you doorstop steps and the frame, and the angel of death will pass you over, and you'll be free. And so they did, and so then Pharaoh said, okay, you can go. So they start going to the Red Sea, and Pharaoh, by the way, changes his mind. and says, oh, that was a mistake. We should have never let them go. Let's go after them and let's eliminate them all. So now, interesting enough, the army is behind them, and the Red Sea is in front of them. And so they're at this place, what I call no man's land. They're in a place where they can't. There's nowhere to go. If they go back, they're going to get killed. If they go forward, they got the sea, and they can't go anywhere.
They can't see their way out of this. They
Right.
don't know what's going to.
And so what God does is He basically puts a cloud and a storm in front of the Egyptians, so they can't attack them. But God and Moses said, "What do we do?" He says, "Well, do you believe that I'm going to supernaturally rescue you? And if you do, I want you to, lift up your hands." By the way, they had to help him do that. And while you're lifting up your hands, you'll get victory, and you'll see what I'm about ready to do. You'll see the victory that I'm about ready to give you. So, okay, I believe that. So what happened is the Red Sea parted.
Right.
And not only did it part, but they had dry ground because it would be mucky and mushy, and they would sink. Right. They got across, so 2 million people. So it took a while. Probably took a couple of days.
Right.
At least to get through that. So the Red Sea is parted. They go through on dry ground, and then as soon as they get across, the enemy is released from being blocked, and they say, we're going to go after them. And so they go into where the Red Sea had parted, and then God has the Red Sea come upon them and kill them all.
Right.
And by the way, there has been some archaeological digs that have evidently found chariot wheels in the Red Sea.
Oh wow!
So it's really pretty cool that it was verified that it all happened to be true. So they crossed the Red Sea, and now they're what they're called saved. They're free. They're no longer in bondage, and God says, and this would be the equivalent of salvation, that where you're no longer trapped by the enemy.
Right.
You are now free to enjoy life with me. Well, God says, let's cross the Jordan, and I'm going to have you possess, occupy, receive the promised land, Canaan, that I'm going to do all the work and give it to you. I'm going to defeat the enemy city by city by city. You go possess it.
Right.
And by the way, it's a land of milk and honey, houses, great vineyards, cattle,
Everything plentiful.
everything bountiful, and I'm going to defeat the enemy and you'll be at peace. Well, the Israelites, and they sent the 10 spies out, the 12 spies, two of them are Joshua and Caleb, and then the 10, and they came back and said, these guys have never been defeated. They're way too strong for us.
Right. There's no way we can do this.
There's no way we can do this, and we're not going. And God said, yeah, I know it's not about you, it's about me. And are you telling me you're not willing to believe in faith what I have spoken?
Right.
By the way, look at what I you remember what I just did? I parted the Red Sea and took care of all the Egyptians. Do you think I can keep doing that?
Right.
And the answer was, no, we don't. So we're not willing to go. So they wandered around, this is in Hebrews 3, 15 and 19. They wandered around for 40 years. God was angry at them for 40 years. And they never fulfilled receiving the resolution or the promise that God had because they weren't willing to go by faith. They just occupied life in the natural. And their life was really miserable because it was in the desert for 40 years, just wandering around basically doing nothing.
Right.
So it was really miserable. But God said, I can't, and this is what it says, I could not give you the promised land because of your unbelief, refusal to be persuaded that what God had to say was true.
Right.
Because it's by faith, not by sight. Okay. So we've been reading verses in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is basically speaking to the children of the ones that wandered around the wilderness, and they all died outside of God's will. So now Moses is saying to the nation of Israel that has now been repopulated with kids.
So this is the next generation, basically.
The next generation that have been born in the wilderness. So they don't even know Egypt.
Right.
They also don't know the Promised Land. All they know is wandering around.
Right.
And it's been kind of miserable for them. And God says, okay, I'm ready to take you now. And he says, and this is cool, by the way, he says this to every one of us, how about you? And how about now?
Right.
How about you? And how about now? Okay, I know your parents didn't go. They refused to go. And they lived life misery.
Right.
Nothing was resolved for them. How about you? Do you have a heart to let me resolve it for you and to give you the Promised Land and to walk by faith? And he keeps saying, possess what I'm about ready to do, and we're going to displace greater things than you. And I know it's difficult, but don't worry about it. We will do it step by step by step, city by city by city. Listen and follow. Listen and follow, and believe and walk forward into what my promise is. You have to go possess it.
Right. I want to just chime in real quick. This is slightly off topic, or off of what you're wanting to accomplish in this, yet I feel prompted just to highlight what you just talked about there in the promise of, as you step in, the ability to each of us to break away from generational curse and generational strongholds that exist in our lives and in our families. Because, God, I think so many times the world will tell you, well, that's what they came from. That was the lot you were given, and this is how you will always be. And what you just described there, this opportunity that he gives the children of these who refused to be a new generation who chooses him, that opportunity is given to each one of us as an individual to break generational strongholds and to step into the fullness and the promises of what God has. Each and every one of us have that. We are not bound to what we came from.
Right. And
I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah. And let's go ahead and talk about that a second. I think this is really important. Thanks for bringing it up. When you think of generational stronghold, it's patterns that have developed in a family, the way that you were raised, and then you learned. Right. And then you tend to follow the same thing. Interesting.
Without even realizing you do it sometimes.
No, and it's really interesting. And I think there's, because of the sinful nature, there's a mechanism that is true, and it's this: the harder you try on your own to break, eliminate, stop, change, the deeper it gets in you. So you see it happen all the time, and I hear this all the time. I'm never going to be like my mom. I'm never going to be like what they treated us. And guess what? They become exactly like
right. And you hear the words coming out of your mouth.
Yeah. I'm trying not to. And it's just similar to, people that I work with. I work with a lot of executives, and I've got a few actually right now that are addicted to pornography. And as I talk to them, okay, tell me about it. Tell me about it. Well, this is when it started. I've tried to stop it. I know I'm not supposed to. I don't even like it per se, but yet I still keep doing it. Right. And I know I'm not supposed to, and it's hampering my life and my marriage, and it's a problem. but I try. And I said, yeah, the harder you tried, the deeper it got. And then you get to a point of resignation, and I can't get out of it.
Right.
And
you believe that's all there will ever be.
And I believe that's it. Particularly as you attribute it, and you're suggesting that, well, and there's a lot of discussion about this. Well, that's part of my generational curse, and I'm just kind of stuck with it.
Right.
And I don't want to do it that way.
This is my lot. Woe is me. Yeah.
So I don't want to fall into anger. I don't want to fall into hostility. I don't want to fall into addiction. I don't want to fall into abuse. I don't want to fall into, and I'm going to try to stop that. But the harder you try in the natural, the deeper it gets. And Psalm 103 actually talks about that, is that God said, you're going to have to let me restore these deep patterns in your life, because you can't do it. Matter of fact, you're making it worse. So that generational curses, first of all, it does become understandable. You can kind of say, yeah, man, my family, boy, we're acting just like my family. We're acting just like my parents. I'm trying to stop being so angry, but I can't stop it. And I guess it's a generational curse. And then, unfortunately, there's a whole movement of, well, I'm going to break that curse. And it's a I guess you would call it a ritual. Okay, if you come and I'm going to pray over you, and we're going to claim and we're going to break this curse. And we're praying it off, and we're going to, you spend time with me going through this process. We're praying off this curse, and you're free. And people think, good.
Right. They think that's it.
All right. Hallelujah. I did it. They broke it. It's I prayed it off. And God says, well, it's not about praying it off. It's about letting me transform it. And you're going to have to walk with me into letting me transform you by releasing the curse, but replacing it with my life.
Right.
That I have for you. And it's more than just praying it off. It's abiding and walking into him resolving this particular thing.
Right. And literally restoring and renewing it to something better than it was before.
Right. So that you're free. If Christ makes you free, you'll be free indeed. But it takes an abiding. It takes a walking. If you abide in my word, you'll know the truth. The truth will set you free. You have to receive it. So, like when I'm working with people right now, particularly with pornography, for example, it's like, okay, stop trying so hard. Let's let God get to the root of it. And then you abide with him and let him guide you, transform you, work you, spiritually move you into healing. Let him heal you of this. And you'll be free of it, and God will resolve it. So that as we look at generational curses, and by the way, it says this in Proverbs chapter 8, is one of the things to allow God to bring you freedom and restoration is, he says, fear the Lord. This is in Proverbs chapter 8. Fear the Lord, hate evil, hate pride and arrogance, and then seek and follow and walk in God's wisdom.
Right.
And so to hate evil is to say, wait a minute, yeah, this... I can see the impact of the generational curse, and it's not doing me any good.
Right.
And I'm frustrated, and I'm upset all the time, and things aren't working, and I fall into these patterns. And he said, well, you need to say, we don't need to put up with this. The word evil there are things that annoy, frustrate, irritate,
Right.
and cause you difficulty. And you just say, well, I don't need to put up with this. I'm also going to hate pride and arrogance. Pride and arrogance is I'm going to stop trying to fix this myself.
Right. Exactly.
I'm going to just go and seek with him and say to God, I understand about generational curse. Would you please heal me? And like you said, reverse that curse, change that position, stop the pattern.
Yes.
And it's going to be new with me. Now, by the way, because we're imperfect people, guess what? You'll have your own you'll have your own stuff that you're doing to your kids that they'll need to do the same thing. I got to break that off and start anew, and then let me process anew. But I can get freedom from this. So
Right.
it's when we're talking about God's resolution. It's no, you don't need to put up with that. At the same time, you can't fix it.
Right.
And stop trying to. And you can't even just pray it off. It's a deep-seated part of what we call woundedness of your soul. That
God has to step in and reveal even to you some of what those wounds are, so that you are then able to allow him to minister to them and to heal them.
Right. And so it's a matter of heart. Well, first of all, I don't need to live this way any longer, but I'm going to go to God and say, God, would you bring healing? Would you bring freedom? Would you get me through this so that this curse that I've been experiencing, that I understand the source of it, doesn't impact me anymore, and you really can transform me? And the answer is yes.
Right.
Yes, I can. So that generational curse, it's real, but it doesn't need to be followed, or it doesn't need to be promoted, or it doesn't need to be accepted, but rather, you know what? I think God's asking me to be the one to bring about His transformation,
Right.
and the way to do it is let me just walk with Him, and let Him do it, so that
let him make me new.
Let Him make me new. And you'll see the difference. And by the way, He'll even show you how to handle the generations that are still around you, because they're still in their pattern,
Right.
and they actually want to promote the pattern amongst you and control you. And God says, well, I got to give you wisdom and insight as to set up the right boundary so that you can be free of that. You can still enjoy being around it, but they're not going to have them impact you anymore.
Right.
Let me show you that. So it's very, very deep. It's very, very profound. And I'm glad you brought this up, because there's just a misunderstanding about it. Is either I guess I got to just live with it, or I'm going to just pray it off, and isn't that going to work?
It's done. Right.
And now that doesn't work either. It needs to be released, and then it needs to be replaced with God's nature, His character,
Yes.
and let me bring you freedom with a heart of, yeah, I got a problem, and I would like you to resolve it. He said, great, let's go. You're ready. Let me resolve it for you. And I'll take you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have a sweet friend who is Italian through and through. And so when their family is together, they can be loud, they can be boisterous, they also can be angry. They know how to fight.
Yep.
But that is the environment that she grew up in. And then as a mom, she found herself very frustrated in the fact that she would react in anger so quickly on things, and really was like, I'm trying and I'm trying and I'm trying, and I just can't respond any differently. It's all I know. It's all I've learned. And instead of focusing on that, we shifted to, okay, let's talk about, what's it like to abide and just learn His character, learn His love, and receive it. And then let's just see how that affects everything else. And truly, if you could see her journey over the last 2 years of how much she has grown, she would tell you now, not only is she not that angry responder. And it's not that she tried to not be. She just began walking with Jesus. And the more she walked with him, the more she looked like him, the more she sounded like him, the more she spoke like him, the more she responded like him. As she was abiding, those shackles just fell.
Yeah.
And those shackles just fell, and she was able to really be transformed. And now her family is watching her do the very same thing. They're like the extended family is watching, and they're in awe.
Yes.
And they're beginning to ask questions. And I think we're going to see God just move all the way through.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, and so, as we understand this, it's, you don't need to live with generational curse, but you can't fix it. And you can't just pray it off. It's just a matter of letting God transform you by abiding, letting him work with you spiritually to transform your heart and heal the woundedness that we have. And the key is that we have a heart to go. And as we looked at the generation that Moses was speaking to, is that, well, how about you and how about now? Do you want to do a different thing?
Right.
And they said, yeah, we do. And actually, let's look at that of how that works. So go to Joshua 1, verses 10 to 18. Joshua 1, 10 to 18.
Joshua commanded the officers of the people, pass through the midst of the camp and command the people, prepare your provisions, for within 3 days you are to pass over this Jordan to go in and to take possession of the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess. And to the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half tribe of Manasseh, Joshua said, remember the word that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, saying, the Lord your God is providing you a place of rest and will give you this land. Your wives, your little ones, and your livestock shall remain in the land that Moses gave you beyond the Jordan. But all the men of valor among you shall pass over armed before your brothers and shall help them until the Lord gives rest to your brothers as he has to you. And they also take possession of the land that the Lord your God is giving them. Then you shall return to the land of your possession and shall possess it, the land that Moses, the servant of your Lord, gave you beyond the Jordan, toward the sunrise. And they answered Joshua, all that you have commanded us we will do, and wherever you send us we will go. Just as we obeyed Moses in all things, so we will obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you, as he was with Moses. Whoever rebels against your commandment and disobeys your words, whatever you command him shall be put to death. Only be strong and courageous.
Yeah. So he's already said to Joshua, get ready to go. Remember to meditate on my word day and night. Be strong and courageous. You're going to get great prosperous. You follow me, and follow how I want to go. And Joshua said, okay. Then he says, tell everybody. Now, are you willing to go? Ask them. Get ready. And are you willing to go? And so he does. And in verse 16, what was their response?
And they answered, all that you have commanded us we will do, and wherever you send us we will go.
Yeah. Okay. Now, think about their parents. Mm-hmm. What did their parents say?
Their parents chose not to.
Yeah. We're not willing. Yeah. No, we are not willing to go where you send us. We're not willing to go. We're not willing to be persuaded that what you have to say was true. But this generation says, we'll
send us. We'll go.
Whatever you tell us and wherever you send us, we're surrendering our thought to your thought. Okay, why? Well, I'm taking you to the promised land. I'm going to resolve your issue. You don't need to wander around living in mediocrity, living in difficulty, living in struggle with no joy. I'm going to deliver to you the promised land. Do you have a heart to go? Yes. Wherever you send us, we'll go. Whatever you tell us, we'll do. Okay, it's a beautiful thing. And then they add to it. And they said, by the way, if somebody doesn't obey, what are they going to do?
Put him to death.
Yeah, put him to death. Now, we don't have to go to that extreme. But the outcome and the process is really what he's trying to get to here, is that what do you want? What do you want around you? Okay,
right.
I got a problem. God says, "Are you willing to go?" And you say yes, but what do you want around you?
You want people around you who are also willing to go.
Yeah.
Who are going to help strengthen and encourage your faith in the midst of that as well, to stay with what he's doing.
Yeah, and those that aren't, he says, in a sense, he says, put them to death, in the sense of move them out of your circle, so that they're not impacting, and you're struggling with following me, because I need unity.
Right.
With everybody is going to have to follow together, and if somebody doesn't have a heart to do that, then basically move them out of the way.
Yeah. And that's not necessarily saying move them out of your life or anything else, but move them out of that inner circle of people that you have that help to keep you abiding, you know, and are willing to go to the Father with you and look at what he has to say and obey.
Okay, now think about why. Why does God need you to get him out of the way?
Because that's going to be a constant distraction, for one thing, and keep you from hearing with clarity. It's going to lead to confusion. It is an open door for the enemy to seed, to throw seed into more confusion and not really knowing what's going on. And you want people willing to strictly hear from God.
Yeah, and what's required? See, it's walking by faith into what he's saying he will do, and then what's my instruction for me to follow you into that, to be obedient to that. Well, he says, I can't afford for you to be debating that and letting people influence you to say, nah, you should do it this way, because
I need your full attention.
God says, I need your attention by faith to possess the promise that I'm giving you, which, by the way, means what? You heard what I said. You understand what I said. You have unity about what I said. And now when I say to you, I want you to do this step of obedience, you're willing to do it. And you're not debating with somebody around you who's part of your inner circle. I don't think we should do that. Or no, let's go a different way. Or, yeah, God said, but I'm not sure that's going to work. So that, for example, and we'll see this, the first city that Joshua goes to is Jericho.
Right.
What did God tell him?
Very unique instructions there. To walk around 7 times and then blow the trumpet, and the city would be handed over.
Yeah, and see, everybody had said, we're willing to go and follow you completely. And what we don't read there, and this is in Joshua chapter 7, we don't read, there was a great debate.
Right.
And
you also don't read about a little pocket of people who ran off to do it on their own way.
Yeah. Or no, we're not willing to do that. There was no dissension. It was, well, no, we believe, we heard, we understand, we've already said yes. So if that's God's instruction, okay, we're in. Let's go. And that's why this verse is so critical, is God saying to you, well, what about you? Yeah, I know people around you haven't done this. I know you got small groups that haven't done this. I know you got people at church that haven't done this. I know you got family members that haven't done this. How about you? And how about now? Are you willing to listen and follow? And he's looking for an answer, which is what verse 16 is all about, is, yep, let's go. I'm willing to go. Now think about this. had they even understood this, had they learned this? See, they haven't learned this.
Right. They're just acting on faith.
They've been given instruction. Remember Deuteronomy? We've been talking all these verses in Deuteronomy. Listen to what I have to say. Follow what I have to say. Be obedient to what I have to say. Take the words that I give you and deepen them into you. Fear me. Walk with me. Cling to me. Love me. Serve me. Be obedient to me. They're hearing all that stuff. But do they understand it? No. It's not going to happen until they actually execute it, implement it. So the first test was Jericho.
Right.
Well, they could have said, yeah, we said we're going to do that, but you know what?
That's hokey.
That doesn't make sense. Wait a minute, Joshua, that doesn't make sense. What if? And none of them said it. They said, no, okay, we're learning it. We're going to learn this. And they did. They learned it, and they saw God fulfill by promise. If you do this, I'll do this. You'll see it. You'll possess it, and you'll take over Jericho.
Right.
Great. Okay. Now there's this isn't one of the verses I gave you, but God wants me to help explain this. Go to Joshua chapter 5, verses 13 to 15. This is a piece of the truth about how this works. Joshua 5, 13 to 15. Go ahead and read that. We didn't have that on our list, but this is important for us to understand it.
All right. It says, when Joshua was by Jericho, he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a man was standing before him with his drawn sword in his hand. And Joshua went to him and said to him, are you for us or for our adversaries? And he said, no, but I am the commander of the army of the Lord. Now I have come. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and worshipped and said to him, what does my Lord say to his servant? And the commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua, take off your sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy. And Joshua did so. Yeah.
So this is really a cool story about actually he encounters Jesus because of the aspect of worship, which we'll get into. So we've read in chapter 1, they said, let's go. He has them cross the Jordan. By the way, supernaturally.
Right.
The sea had to part. The Jordan River had to part. They had to walk across on dry ground and get across. And they took the Ark of the Covenant in front of them, and they believed it. So they go across, and this is really cool. The first thing that God had him do were two things. One was the covenant. They had stopped during that 40 years circumcision. Right. So they stopped circumcising all that. So none of the males in the group now that all been born have not been circumcised. Right. Why did they stop circumcising it?
Didn't they actually stop that and stop doing communion? Because what they needed to do these things were, the circumcision, I think they also were just walking away from the covenant.
Yeah. Because the covenant, see, the circumcision was the sign of the covenant.
Yeah.
So they just said, well, we're not receiving the covenant anymore. Because God said they could not enter the promised land because of their refusal to be persuaded of what God had to say was true. So then they just stopped. So why bother? So they stopped bothering. So the first thing they do is God says, well, I'm going to reestablish covenant. Do you remember what I've said? I'm going to bless you to make you a blessing, which, by the way, all of Deuteronomy is the depth of all that. I mean, it's tremendous reinforcement of the covenant. Yes. So circumcise everybody. Again, you commit to receiving that sign, and are you in? Do you believe it? Yes. So they circumcised them. By the way, they took a week off.
I bet.
Okay, let's rest up a little bit here, and before we go to battle, the second thing was Passover, and again, they did Passover 1 year of the 40, and then they didn't do it for 39. The reason is that the provision
Right.
for the Passover, which was unleavened bread and wine, was across
That was
the
in
Jordan.
the promised
It
land.
was in the promised
right?
land. It was intended to just walk right in and start to
And to have those
continue.
things.
So
Yeah.
they had a command every year do Passover. Well, they couldn't because they didn't have the material to do it.
Right.
Because the provision was in the promised land. So having crossed, and again, it wasn't even time for Passover because remember, there's a certain sequence to it.
Right.
Joshua said, well, God said to Joshua, I want you to do Passover. Remember again that I'm going to deliver you step by step by step,
Right.
just like I did with Moses and your parents. So they did Passover. So they circumcised in Passover. So they've already done that. Now it comes to chapter 5. And Jesus shows up. And Joshua sees the commander of the Lord's army and says, are you for me or for them?
And he says, no.
No.
Not either.
He says emphatically no. Because basically, again, how we approach it, even Joshua, how he was approaching it was, yeah, I'm surrendered, but I've got a plan. Are you for my plan or not?
Or are you for my enemy's plan?
Or are you for something else? And the commander of the Lord's army, who happens to be Jesus, says, no. You just asked the wrong question. You're on holy ground. And by the way, that's why he's not an angel, or he's not even a man who's highlighted as a leader, because the only ones that could ever be worshipped on holy ground was God.
Right.
And so angels would never let them be worshipped. Other men would never let you be worshiping them. So he said, yeah, you got to worship me. Take your sandals off and worship me because you're on holy ground. Okay. And then Joshua says, sorry, I know I just asked the wrong question. And instead of me saying, are you for my plan or not, he says, what do you have to say to your servant? In other words, I'm your servant.
Right.
I'm your servant. And now what do you have to say to me about your instruction of you giving me a promise and then you guiding me with steps of obedience? What do you have to say to me? And Jesus said, you get it. You understand it. That's it. If you're going to follow me into my resolution, he said, are you going to ask me, am I for your plan or not? Versus, why don't you just say, what do you have to say about this at this point, and don't presume anything. Just say what you've got to say to me, and then I'll follow you because I'm going to be your servant. I'm going to surrender my will to yours. Why? Well, you know best and none better. You can overcome. You're mightier than the enemy. You can fulfill the promise. I'm going to just follow you. And he got it. So he said, I'm going to function that way. Instead of me coming up with my own plan, I'm going to say, what do you got to say? Okay, so the first city is Jericho. What do you got to say? March around the city 7 times, blow the trumpet, the walls will fall in, you go in and capture the enemy, and you take over Jericho and occupy it. Okay. He does. And by the way, he says in that instruction, don't take anything. I don't want you to take anything for yourself. Don't worry, I'll give you plenty of provision, but on this particular instruction, do not take their stuff for yourself into your own stuff. There's a few things that I want you to do to have for your worship, but not personally. Okay, the next city, which is in chapter 7 and 8, is Ai. And Ai was a small town, and Joshua, his men to him say, yeah, this will be easy. We'll just go down there and attack them, no problem. Okay, go ahead, just take a few thousand men defeat him, let me know, and then we'll take care of it. Well, they go down there, they get routed, and they lose. And so they come back, and they said, we got beat, and we were unsuccessful. And Joshua, he goes to where we always go.
Right.
He says, hey, I thought you said you're going to deliver the promised land. We just got beat. It looks like we should have stayed in Egypt. Interesting enough. I guess we made a mistake.
Funny how quickly we can go to that too, right?
I guess we should have gone back to Egypt, and boy, we just made a huge mistake. And I thought you said, and I guess it ain't going to happen. And we're toast. And God says, well, son, a couple things. Remember just a week or two ago, you met Jesus? What did Jesus
taught you this question to ask?
What did Jesus say to you? You're supposed to say what?
What do you have to say?
What do you got to say about this? You didn't ask me. You decided. And you not only did you say, "Are you for my plan?" You even forgot that step. You just went and executed a plan.
Right.
And you didn't ask me. So, one, you made a mistake by not asking me. Number two, had you asked me, I'd have told you got sin in the camp. Remember what I told you? Don't take the stuff. Well, you got people in your camp.
Somebody did
that took the stuff. We can't go any further until you clean that up. And that's what I would have told you. And I would have saved you getting defeated. I would have just said, well, you got to clean that up, and then we'll go further. And Joshua said, okay, sorry, got it. I understand. I forgot that question. I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to do it. And first of all, you're instructing me to clean this up. Take care of this sin. Yep. Take care of it, then I'll tell you what to do next. Okay, so he says, I'm going to be obedient to that. Takes care of it. Gets rid of the people that were sinning and who covered it up. And then he has purity again, because I've repented. Now, what do you got to say?
Right.
Go to AI. I'll defeat him. Do it this way. By the way, it's not going to be marching around 7 times. I'm not doing that again.
And that's important, not to presume that just because God worked one way at one time, that's also going to be his instruction for the next.
That's right. And then let me share with you how to maneuver. And okay, so he got it. So he understood, having learned the lesson. And here's the cool thing about God is that because we failed, which he did, he didn't say, okay, that's it. You weren't perfect, so you're out. It's like, let me revisit what's important. You're going to have to ask me my will. You're going to have to surrender to my will. You're going to have to be obedient. And if I'm telling you that you got sin in the camp or you got a problem that has to be resolved first, let's go take care of that before we can go forward and listen to what I have to tell you. And of course, Joshua did. So that as we possess his answers, it's starting with, what about you? Do you have a heart to go? Are you going to listen? Are you going to follow? And then do you understand the depth of that is, don't ask me to support your plan.
Right.
Ask me what do I have to say about this, and let me guide you through to resolution. And that's what you and I have learned.
Absolutely.
I don't need to figure this out. I don't need to give God suggestions. Well, here I think you ought to fix it this way. It's just be real pure. Well, what do you got to say about this? Hey, I got COVID. What do you got to say about this? Okay, let me guide you into that. Let me share with you next. Now what's next? Now what's next? And you start living life, without worry, fear, and anxiety. You live it with, wow, this ought to be interesting. And I can hardly wait. And I'm going to discover what he has to say, because he's going to resolve this issue, and I can trust it.
Right.
So it's a beautiful thing.
It absolutely is.
Yeah. So we'll pick this up again next week as we start heading toward our final statements about this whole area, and then we'll get into a different topic here in a week or so. But we just really encourage everybody to really consider his statement as he said to the children of the ones that had failed is, well, what about you? And we're encouraging everybody to say, I'm willing to learn what it means to find out your resolution, your way, to walk with you, to let you resolve it, and I'll trust you in that because it's a walk of faith. And so we just pray that you will really take that up. We're going to have a guest again tomorrow. That is
you guys will not want to miss this one.
It'll be fun with Lillian and Silvano, who are from Brazil, I believe.
Yes,
and so,
they are.
They're going to explain to us some cool stuff for them. And
beautiful inspirational stories from them too.
We're moving then Friday into End Times Friday, where we're talking about the millennium. So this is going to be a fun week. So we'll look forward to catching up again, starting again next Monday, Kathy.
Sounds great. Thanks so much. And thank you for joining us, everyone. Be sure to tune in tomorrow. Like Rich said, you will not want to miss hearing Lillian and Sylvania's story. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
God is good.
Yeah, God is good. Okay, we'll see you soon.
Have a great day, everyone.
Okay, yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. Send us your questions and comments, and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.